Japanatron. 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 Japanatron.
And hello, everybody! Welcome to Japanatron. As you may have guessed, Japanatron is a show about Japan, about living in Japan, Japanese culture, all that good stuff. My name is Dave Pavlina. I'm your host. Let's jump right into it. Today's topic is called Reflections on Life in the Countryside. Now, I used to live in the countryside because I thought, if you really want the real Japanese experience, you shouldn't move to the big city. To get the real feel for what a country is all about, you gotta live out in the sticks, live out in the countryside. And, my hometown being LA, that's a pretty big-ass city, so I figured, I go from LA to Tokyo, it's pretty much the same shit, Because, big cities have this way of just breeding assholes, because you put a bunch of people, you cram them all together in a small space, and they're bound to get all pissed off at each other. Because, people want space, damn it, and a city just takes all that away from you. True, big cities have all the convenience, the 24/7, this and that. But, big cities is pretty much where all the assholes congregate. Well, it's not really where they congregate, it's where they're bred. Because I'm sure very nice people, I used to be a nice guy. And then the big city just turned me into a big fucking asshole. So anyways, I digress. From LA, I decided to move to the countryside. And the question was where. So, I quit my my IT job in LA, and I was looking for an English teaching job, because pretty much, if you want to live in the countryside of Japan, that's just about your only option. I'm sure there's a few other lesser known options, but that's your main one, is doing the English teaching thing. And, the real popular approach is to do the JET program. You make pretty good money, better than the Eikaiwas, the English conversation schools. But I decided not to do that. I did the English conversation school. I did Eon. And if you're looking into this, I'm sure everyone's told you don't do Nova. Nova means no vacation. And I heard the same things. This was back in 2003. Don't do Nova. Don't do Nova. It sucks. So I didn't bother with that. I just skipped right over that one. The other one I heard not so good things about was Geos. And I really didn't hear anything concrete about them, so I can't really say if they're really bad or not. A few people told me, Geos isn't so good either, so I just kind of skipped that one. The good ones I heard were ECC and Eon, and I applied to both. And I got both. And I went with Eon for the simple reason that ECC was going to have me float to many different schools, whereas Eon has you in one school. And I kind of like that approach better because, you get to know people and you get kind of a better relationship with your students and your coworkers. Anyways, they offered me Tottori, and I'm like, where the fuck is that? I never heard of the place. But the name sounded kind of cool, and I wasn't expecting to hear of any place they were going to offer me, because I'm not like, a Japan geographical expert. So I had to look it up. I was Googling it. It's the most countryside by population. It has fewer people than Okinawa. At the time, it had about 650,000 in the whole prefecture. It's between Hyogo Prefecture and Shimane Prefecture. Basically, if you go to Osaka, which is on the Pacific Ocean side, you just cut straight across Japan to the Japan seaside, the China seaside, depending on who you're talking to. The other side of Japan, that's Tottori, and they offered me Tottori City, which is actually another advantage of the English conversation schools. If you're in the countryside with those, you usually get the city at least. With the JET program, they will stick you way the fuck out there. I had some people I knew in the JET program, and they were, it was like a fucking rice field with their house in the middle of it. That's really countryside. With the English conversation schools, it's countryside, but you're pretty much stuck in they pretty much put them in the population centers at least. And so it wasn't only, the other reasons I went with the English conversation schools was, let's see, with the JET program, you're teaching not necessarily kids that want to learn English. You get some douchebag high school boys that don't want to be there. You're teaching a class of 30. You're going to get some pretty, poorly motivated classes. Eon's expensive. The English conversation schools are expensive. So most people are really motivated because they're paying a lot of money for it. You may get the occasional high school kid where the parents are making them go, but that was pretty rare because usually the Japanese teachers would get them because they'd be pretty low level. The kids you get would be pretty high level because they'd have to be good enough to understand a class 100% in English and follow along. So they'd be kind of intermediate to advanced usually. Why did I go with Tottori? Well, it was offered to me. And it seemed cool. It had I checked into it. It's like 150,000. That's big enough. It's on the beach and it has a nice it's famous for the sand dune. And I love Japan because each prefecture is famous for something, and it's usually always food. And it was like Tottori's famous things are the crab and pears. They're 20th century round pears. So I'm like, that's cool, man. That's a good feeling. I saw some pictures. The thing is, any place was going to be fine because really, you're not going to know how good or bad it is until you're really there. And by then, it's too late anyway. So, I was thinking, probably a few of my listeners maybe want to hear a lot about Eon, and the experience of working at the Eikaiwa. I'm thinking of covering that in another episode. Today I'm going to basically try to focus on life as it was in Tottori, daily life. I will touch a little bit on the experience of the English school, but I'm thinking maybe I'll just wrap that into another episode if anyone's interested, because I'm sure a lot of Westerners are interested in the whole experience of teaching at an English conversation school. It's such a popular way of getting over to Japan. Daily life. I want to make a few points here. And if you've been to Tokyo, or if you've been to Japan at all, foreigners stand out. You got like 150 million in Japan, and I think it's only 1 million of those are foreigners actually living here. And you have to also remember that the majority of those 1 million foreigners are of Asian descent. So for a Westerner to live here, you do stand out. In Tokyo, you don't get stared at so much because it's a city of like 13 million. It's pretty cosmo, and people are used to it. But when you live out in the countryside, you're going to get stared at. You're going to stand out a lot more. And you know what? I don't even blame them for it. Because let me tell you, months would go by and I would not see another foreigner except for the other teacher I had at Eon. But that doesn't really count because I see him at work anyway. Months would go by and I'd see another foreigner and I'd be like, the fuck is this? This is my fucking town. So, yeah, I don't really blame them. Even to me, I stand out. I look in the mirror, I'm like, fuck, man, I stand out here. So, I don't know. For that kind of percentage, that kind of ratio of foreigners, yeah, shit, fine, stare. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing, all right? The bad thing, everybody knows you. You're basically a celebrity, okay? Which could be good, okay, but you gotta be really fucking careful, okay? It can wear on you. I mean, if you're gonna get drunk in public, or if you're gonna be drunk, I have a good story about this. A friend of mine got drunk and he literally passed out on the street and he was vomiting. And the students walked by and saw him, and it was like all over. It was practically front page news the next day. So you got to be careful with that kind of shit. The other funny thing is I was at the video store and I was like, I saw the porno section, with the curtains. And I was like, shit, man, I want to check out what the Japanese porno is like, it's kind of a cultural experience, What's the deal with the Japanese porno, section in the video store? I've been to plenty of them in the US, and I was like, no, Dave, you better not, because sure enough, a student is going to see me go in there. Or worse yet, a student will already be in there when I come in. I'm like, hey, Takashi, Yoko, how's it going? Just looking at some pornos. No, I just didn't do it. That's what the internet's for, you know? Be careful. It can wear on you. But the good thing is, like I said, you're a celebrity. I'd sometimes my coworker and I would sometimes get free drinks, you know, like on the house. The service in Japan is already excellent, and when you're a foreigner, especially way out in the countryside, often it's even better because they're like, oh hey, especially if they speak some English, you know, they want to practice. Don't expect much English, by the way, but that's why you study Japanese, because out in the countryside, a little tiny bit of Japanese goes a long way. I have a good example. I went to Just Go, which is basically Japan's version of Walmart. I think it's called Aeon now, which is so confusing. Anyways, I went there, and I was looking for something. And I admit, sometimes I just took advantage of this. I would just say, sumimasen, excuse me. A simple sumimasen would get me like 3 people around me, and they would just do the shopping for me. I would just show them the list, and they would be like running around getting everything for me, practically. Because they do not expect white boy like me to speak a word of Japanese. And when I busted out just a simple sumimasen, it got me like unbelievable service. So in that sense, yeah, it's a good thing. It could be a very good thing. But be careful. Like I said, everybody knows you. Students would say to me on Tuesday, starting class, hey, I saw you at such and such. I saw you at this restaurant. And it's kind of creepy, actually, because it's like, they're not stalking you, but they're just like, yeah, I saw you. You know, you didn't see them at all. Because they're blending in. They blend in. You don't blend in at all. It's like, yeah, I saw you. And I remember one student was like, yeah, I saw him with a girl. And he was like telling my boss. And my boss knew, you know, I was going out with a girl and everything. So she was fine with it. But it's kind of creepy, you know, like a student will tell your boss, like, yeah, I saw him. He was on a date. He was holding hands with a girl or something. Something's going on. So just be careful. Another good example, I go to the post office, you know, like, hey, like the, you know, old Bob down at the post office knows you. So it's that small town feeling, but you're also kind of a celebrity. You know, you're a big fish in a small pond. So be careful. Be careful. That's the advice I can give you. In my free time, let's talk about this. Now, Eon gave me the weekend at Eon was Sunday and Monday, which really sucked because I had to work Saturday, and that was actually the busiest day, which if you're not mentally prepared for it, really sucks, because Saturday for so many years was just, you know, kick back and relax, sleep in. But luckily, the schedule at Eon is not very strenuous. I mean, you got to remember, they're recruiting basically people fresh out of college usually, and it's not a really high responsibility job. So luckily the free time was awesome. I mean, our first class would start at like noon, you know, so every day I could sleep in, which is dangerous, I'll say, because you could really become a fucking loser, you know, sleeping until like 11:30 every day. You really feel like you did nothing with your day if you're waking up at 11:30 and then you're going to work. So I tried to put in an effort to get up a little early, you know, to enjoy some free time even before work. So true, it sucked having the Sunday, Monday weekend sometimes, but it wasn't that strenuous of a work schedule. And I'll get into that in another episode, the whole Eon thing. Now, Tottori being out in the countryside, I was really into the outdoor activities. There's a ton of just spans of nature and just beautiful like waterfalls and mountains. And you know, what they would call a park is basically what I would consider like a national or state park in the US. And when I just hear the word park, I just think of like a baseball field or something in a city. But when they say park, it's like 100,000 acres of something, of like unspoiled forest, you know, and with trails going through it. So sometimes I'd hop on my bike up to one of my favorite parks, was called Ochidani Park, and just go hiking through there. And the funny thing about Japan is they stick vending machines everywhere. So I wouldn't even bring water or anything that you'd normally bring on a hike, because along the hiking trail in the middle of the forest, I would inevitably find a vending machine. I'd be in the middle of nowhere and there's just a vending machine there, which was kind of funny. It's kind of sad because, you're spoiling the scenery, the environment and everything with an ugly vending machine right there. But it was convenient. You get like water right in the middle of nowhere. I didn't even have to carry anything. And then, of course, Japan, there's like a convenient little trash can right next to it. So, outdoor activities. If you're going to live in the countryside, I highly recommend them. It's like, moving to Idaho, moving to Wyoming. It's the areas of the country that have this unspoiled nature, and Tottori had plenty of it. Even in June, they had this the same park, Ochinari Park, had fireflies, which was really cool. I had never seen them before, and they're like green, and they're just sort of hovering around everywhere. It's spiritual, man. It's really cool. And if you're gonna experience Japan, I can't stress this point enough. Is that's really a huge advantage of the countryside, is that unspoiled nature. Another thing I love doing was snowboarding. Now, Tottori had a shitload of snow, and I'm from LA, so, LA, California boy doesn't know had been in snow. I'd been in snow before, of course, snowboarding. But when I go back home to LA, there's no snow. So I never had to live with snow, which could really be a pain in the ass. So, snow, okay, fine. That's living with snow, it's the same everywhere. There's nothing really Japanese about that, so I won't get too much into that. But the point is, there's a ton of snowboarding, and it was so close. Even though I didn't have a car, there was a bus or even a train ride that would take me to a ski resort. And this was the huge advantage of the Sunday Monday weekend. Was Monday in the countryside in Japan is fucking awesome. There's no crowd anyway on the weekend, but when you make it Monday morning, there's nothing going on. So I go snowboarding. I even bought a board, which in a way I regret because I could have just rented one and saved myself the trouble. But I bought a board used, and on Monday mornings during the winter, I would just head out to the ski resort. And it was funny, the first time I went, I took the train, and the train just dropped me off at the station with this little town around it. And I had to figure out, I read the guide, and there's like a shuttle that stops in front of the station and will take me straight to the resort, okay? And I'm like, I get off at the station on Monday morning, and there's nobody around. It's just this abandoned station. I'm like, where the fuck is the shuttle? So I'm looking, and I swear, I find the sign for the shuttle. My limited knowledge of Japanese and kanji. I'm like, okay, I think this is the shuttle. I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm like, okay, actually, it should be here in about 15 minutes. 10 minutes goes by. I don't see a soul. And I'm like, okay, I still got another 5 minutes. A truck pulls up. An old guy in a truck, like a pickup truck. And he pulls up to me, and he's like, he says in like really broken, like really old man, guttural Japanese, like, hey, you going up to the resort? Because he sees me in my, snowboarding gear and, snowboard in hand. It's not hard to figure out. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, hop in. And I'm like, is this the shuttle? So shit, I'm like, hey, when in Rome, and Japanese are famous for being nice. So I'm like, shuttle or not, let's do it. So I hop in. He's driving me up the, this icy mountain road up to the resort, and I smell something. I smell liquor, and I'm like, the fuck is that? So I look over. I'm kind of in the back seat, and I look at the guy, and in his drink holder, he's got a can of Chuhai, which is kind of like Bartles and James. It's like a wine cooler sort of thing. And he's fucking literally drinking and driving at the same time. I'm like, oh fuck. And we're driving up this mountain road, this curvy mountain road. And I'm like, just incredible fear comes over me. I'm like, oh shit. Now the guy was nice enough and he's kind of making conversation, but I'm like, oh fuck, am I going to get up there alive? And I'm sort of just high-ing my way through the conversation because I don't know what the fuck he's saying, because he's half drunk, hopefully half drunk, and he's babbling on about something. I just keep sort of high-ing through it. Oh my god, we finally fucking get up there alive. And he's like, hey, give me a call when you're ready to come home and I'll come and pick you up. And I'm like, yeah. And inside I'm like, no fucking way am I going to do that. I'm taking the real shuttle, which I see up there, and it looks nothing like a fucking pickup truck. It looks more official, like a real resort shuttle. Thank God. Worth the 25 yen or whatever it was to get up there. So, yeah, be careful. Japanese are nice, but be sure, hitchhiking up to the ski resort. I'm alive to tell about it. It's got a good story, but, yeah, be careful. Another thing I did in my free time was the city offered free Japanese lessons, which were very, very Japanese, a very Japanese experience. I would show up to this class. I think it was on Saturday or No, it was definitely on Sunday. It was on Sundays, which worked out with my schedule. I'd show up to this class, and I was the only non-Asian, which was kind of a statement about the foreigners in Tottori. I'm sure there were other Westerners in Tottori. I just didn't really put much of an effort into meeting them because that was not really the point in me moving over there. Anyways, I go to this Japanese class, and there'd be like a table of like the China table, and then it would be like all like young Chinese university students. Tottori was a university town. And then another table would be the Filipina housewives, chattering away in Tagalog. And then there'd be like the Thai table, which had maybe like 5 people, and they were kind of like the Chinese students. They were like university students or like factory workers or something that were over there, moved over there. And then there was me. And I'm like, what fucking table do I want to sit at today? He was like, should I do China? Should I do the friendly, the Filipina housewives? Or should I do the Thai people? What should I do? What should I have today? And the class was great because everyone was way more fluent than I was. And this class was basically Japanese people, a Japanese class for people who already speak Japanese. I'm like, it was literally throw you in the deep end of the pool. Now, fortunately for me, I had some Japanese under my belt before I had moved, but I brought some of my coworker friends, and they were not so lucky. They had 0 Japanese, and they really struggled in that class. And I think that's probably why it wasn't frequented by the Westerners. Because it was a pretty tough-ass class if you had 0 Japanese skills. So you really kind of had to know a little bit. But the thing is, everyone was really friendly. The Filipina housewives spoke English, of course, and they helped me out. And it was a fun class. We kind of just pick an activity and kind of go with it for the whole thing. It was free, so really I can't complain. For that reason, it was a blast. They even gave us a textbook, and we had little parties and stuff. And it was a great way to meet people, because I'd run into the teachers, the volunteer teachers there all the time. You're always running into people you know. It's a small town and you stand out. And I loved it. It's really what I consider kind of my glory days in Japan. It's when I first moved there, and it was very much the Japanese experience. I really look back on Tottori with a lot of nostalgia. It was a fantastic experience, and I can't recommend it enough. The biggest thing I did, finishing up this section, what I did in my free time in Tottori, the biggest thing I did was live shows. Now, I was in a band in LA, which shouldn't come as a surprise because everyone from LA is in a fucking band at some point, like your mom and grandma too. And when I moved, I have so much free time when you're an English teacher because once you get the gist of the teaching deal, you pretty much got it figured out, and the classes begin to repeat, and you pretty much figure it out, and your preparation time that you have to put into preparing for classes goes way down, and you just have a lot of free time on your hands. So I found a used guitar, and bought it and just started kind of doing the playing thing again, like I did in the band. This time, I did it as kind of a way to study Japanese. I started writing some songs in Japanese, and I wrote one called Chiba Eki, which is a Chiba station. It was the first song I wrote, and it was a true story. It was about how the first time I came to Japan, my girlfriend at the time was living in Chiba, in the Chiba area, on the JET program. And we went shopping, and I was always a jackass. I still am, and she was emotional. She's kind of an emotional person, so it was a very bad combination because of I was always fucking around making jokes, and she was reacting to them in usually negative ways. So sometimes we get into fights, often because I just be fucking around too much or something. I don't know whose fault is that. So long story short, we're in a fight, walking back to the station after doing some shopping in Chiba. And I let, she gets her ticket first, and I get my ticket, and I turn around and she's gone. Now, she was of Korean American descent, so she kind of blended in with the Asian look. So I was kind of in a shitty mood anyway because of the fight. So I just walked through the turnstile, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna pick a train and go with it because I couldn't read shit. I couldn't read anything. So I'm standing on a random platform I just picked, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna get on the next train. Fuck this. I'm waiting for the train, and on the announcement, you're like, American boy. And I'm like, everyone starts looking at me because I'm the only white boy. I'm the only American boy in the whole station, practically. Everyone's staring at me. I'm like, oh shit, I think that's me. And then I hear like all this rumbling on the mic. David, come to the JR station. David, come to the JR station. It's my girlfriend's voice. I'm like, oh fuck. Walk of shame. I had to walk down to the JR station, the JR office or whatever at the station, and my girlfriend was waiting there. She's like, I'm so sorry, we got separated. I'm like, yeah, we got separated. You fucking ditched me. Anyways, wrote a song about it. Years and years later, wrote a song about it called Chiba Eki. And I played it at one of the Eon parties. Our school put on a lot of, like a Halloween party was our big one. We usually did because it's a very American thing to do, a very Western thing to do, Halloween. And I played it, and the students loved it. And they said, dude, you should play that at the live house. Tottori's one live house, which is called After Hours. So I check out After Hours, and it's a pretty cool place. They got like jazz, they got a house band that's real good, kick-ass band. They got this guy working there, chef named Poncho, which I thought added a lot of attitude, a lot of personality to that place. He looked like a big Mexican guy, but he was Japanese, big fat Mexican guy is really what he looked like. But he's a Japanese dude, and the best fucking cook ever. Made some kick-ass tacos. Best tacos you ever have. All my friends did the same thing. Anyways, he was the lead singer of the house band. So after I'm watching them play, and they kick ass, seriously. They're singing in English. I can't understand a fucking word Poncho's saying, but dude, their energy and everything was awesome. Just something random I just did not expect to find in the countryside. And the countryside Tottori was always full of surprises like that, which made it so much the better. Anyway, so I'm saying, hey, can I play sometime? And, and I was really into recording as well. This podcast should be a testament to that. So I already had like a demo made, and I gave him a CD, and he's like looking at it. He doesn't even listen to it yet, and he's like, "Oh fuck yeah, you gotta play," because a foreigner singing in Japanese. I told him I sing in Japanese. A foreigner performing in the countryside, let alone in Japanese, is so rare. In all my years in Tottori, I never saw another person like me. So yeah, they let me play, and it was a blast, because in LA, no one gives a shit, because you're singing in English, and we were singing like serious, songs, broken heart, blah, blah, blah. No one gives a shit. In Tottori, white dudes singing in Japanese. Now that's weird enough. But I decided to make the songs funny, because my Japanese was shitty, still is. And I'm like, dude, if I do a serious song, it's going to get fucked up. I'm going to fuck this up. So let's do funny songs, because my shitty Japanese will make it even funnier. And then also, I'll know if I succeeded or not. Because with comedy, everyone's laughing. And it's so easy to tell you did a good job, because everyone's laughing. With a serious song, you have no clue how well you did. Everyone's just sitting there. So I just play like 3 songs, and it's a blast. People are laughing, coming up to me, shaking my hand, taking pictures. I feel like a fucking rock star. I loved it. I love that feeling. I never, ever could get that in LA. I'm a fucking rock star here. So I did like a show or two. A guy comes to me and says like, hey, I want to do a story about you in the newspaper. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't a guy. It was a female student. A student of mine was a reporter for the local newspaper. And she does a story about me playing the songs in Japanese. Okay. Then another newspaper contacts me and does a similar story about me. And I'm like in the newspaper twice all of a sudden. And people are saying like, dude, you're like famous. You're in the newspaper. And I'm fucking loving it. You cannot get enough of that. So be careful. The countryside will really make you have a big head. If you want attention, you will get it. If you're an attention fiend like me, you will get attention, and you'll just get addicted to it. It was awesome. So I decided to take the show on the road, hitting the road. And I'm working on recording a CD, because this is so much fun. This is like most of my free time at this point. I'm heading to Osaka, and I see all these street musicians playing, like on bridges, just like out on the street. No permit required or anything. They're just, the whole fucking band is up there, on this bridge or something. So I'm like, I grabbed my guitar one weekend, head out to Osaka, and I'm playing. Unfortunately, I could barely be heard because there's like full bands playing like nearby me. But people are crowding around me because I'm singing these funny songs in Japanese. And some girls come up to me and they say, hey, you should play at the Live House in Osaka. So I sign up there, I get a show, and just all these doors are opening because I just stand out like that. I'm like the only white boy singing funny songs in Japanese. And I cannot get enough of that. So I'm playing shows in Osaka, getting bigger and bigger shows. It wasn't like packed with people or anything, but the enthusiasm of the crowd was just feeding me because it was people you didn't know. I did not know these people, and they're like clapping and cheering and coming up to me and taking pictures after the show. So God, I loved it. So awesome. And 2 of my best friends came out and visited me. We're like, shit, we got to do a show. One of them was in the band with me back in my LA days and college days. He was the lead guitarist. So we're like, dude, we got to put together a show. We do a live show at after hours, and he totally knows, he totally feels what I had been talking about and telling him about for months. He's like, man, that's really cool. Everybody's just really into you, and it was a blast of experience, and you couldn't really top that. How many foreigners could say, hey, I played in countryside Japan in Japanese, and I just brought the house down. House band goes on after our show. They invite, the guitarist Mike, my best friend. to come up there and solo. I got video of it. He's like soloing in front of everybody. We had a bunch of college kids there that night or something from the university and, cheering us on. It was a blast. We could never, ever get that in LA. I mean, we would have to have a record deal and promotions galore to get that kind of atmosphere at one of our shows. In LA, we had to beg people to come. Mom, please come to my show. It's Wednesday at 11 p.m. That's the kind of shit you get. But in countryside Japan, man, I could play anytime. Friday night at 8, at the one live house. So, that pretty much wraps up my nostalgic session. So, hey, I'd love to hear from you. If you lived in the countryside, if you're thinking about coming here, let me know your experiences. I'm sure everyone has a story to tell that's lived out in the countryside. The teaching English in the countryside. There's plenty of people that have done it, and it really nothing comes close, man. So, all right, talk to you guys later. Bye.
Welcome to Japanatron.
You have received this transmission from the Comedy Podcast Network. For more shows, visit comedypodcastnetwork.com.